Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit with The Nature of Things, where we are realigning God, government, and natural law so that we might restore our American Republic. So let's talk briefly about the right to peaceably assemble, and in particular, its sister right, the right of association. Here's a quote. The right of association refers to the freedom of individuals to join or leave groups voluntarily, allowing them to collectively express, promote, pursue, and defend common interests. This right is recognized in various legal frameworks, including the U.S. Constitution and international human rights laws, end quote. However, it's not necessarily recognized by some particular organizations, and in particular the Republican Party of Florida, hereafter noted as the RPOF. Now, the right of association does cut both ways. The group has a right to decide who can be in it, and potential members can decide whether they want to join. So I'm going to make 4 points, taking a look at the RPOF's use of the right of association. There are many members of the Florida Republican Assembly who are also very happy to be part of the Republican Party of Florida through the county RECs. Point number 2, members of the RPOF can be thrown out of groups if they freely associate with other Republican organizations that don't toe the party line on candidates or legislation. Point number 3, the RPOF has chosen to go after Republicans who align with the Judeo-Christian values of the Florida Republican Assembly. So point number 4, therefore, the RPOF doesn't want to associate with the right wing of the party, people who associate with the Florida Republican Assembly. So with that, I would like you to please welcome our guest this morning, Robin Lumb. Good morning, Robin.
Good morning, Chuck. Good morning, Mike.
And yes, we'll bring Mike in as well. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen. Chuck,
Yeah,
as usual, I have to just express my sincere gratitude for having Robin on. I'm sure this is going to be a very interesting conversation, Chuck.
That's awesome. Well, Robin is a candidate for vice president of the Florida Republican Assembly. And I thought I'd start out by asking, well, what started this riff between the Republican Party of Florida and the Florida Republican Assembly?
Well, it wasn't the Florida Republican Assembly, the FRA, that started this. So we set up our chapter here in Duval County in March of last year. And about 6 weeks later, suddenly every chapter in Florida and the FRA state organization gets this very obnoxious cease and desist letter from Ben Gibson, the House attorney for the Republican Party of Florida. And this cease and desist letter basically is commanding and using boldface type and underlining. It says, immediately stop using the name of the Republican Party of Florida in your organization. And what they meant by that was stop using the term Republican. And in his letter, he actually makes the claim, and this is a direct quote, that the term Republican is the official property of the Republican Party of Florida, that they've asserted a proprietary claim. And they've done that. They did that on the basis of a gross misreading, distortion of Florida statutes. Florida statute says a political party is entitled to its name, in this case, Republican Party of Florida, its abbreviations, RPOF, and its symbol, which at the time the RPOF was formed, the symbol was that little stylized Republican elephant superimposed over a map of the state of Florida. So this very obnoxious letter goes out all over the state. And the FRA decided that they were going to hire an attorney, and the attorney, about several weeks later, it took a while for her to get up to speed, but she sent a response. And at that point, we didn't hear anything more from the RPOF on this matter, because the term Republican is generic in nature. It's not subject to trademark. So it's if you went to the United States Patent and Trademark Office and tried to trademark the term Republican, you would immediately have your application turned down. So what happened, what started the rift was that the the RPOF passed a rule shortly after this cease and desist letter went out that said that no member of a Republican executive committee could belong to an organization that is using the name of the Republican Party of Florida, and then their executive board made the ruling that the FRA was one such organization. So they deemed that the FRA was in violation of this new party rule. And because I was party chair, a grievance was filed against me. So the RPOF has a grievance process for removing members. Sometimes that process is abused. In fact, under the current administration of Evan Power, it's always abused. And they alleged that I had violated party rules because, as a member of the REC, I was head of this organization that was using the term Republican in its name. And so that grievance was upheld. In order to uphold the grievance, by the way, they had to waive their own internal rules. Because if you read their rules, then there was the consideration of the grievance at that time was completely improper. And so I was removed. I had been a 20-year member of the Republican Executive Committee. I was a former chairman of the Duval GOP. I'm a former county commissioner. And I was very active in Republican Party politics for a number of years. But they went ahead and removed me using this, basically it was a kangaroo court, the grievance committee. Never even gave me a hearing. So once that happened, I was really disturbed by this notion that the Republican Party of Florida would claim that the word Republican was its official property. So I began looking at the possibility of filing suit, which I did. And so I filed suit against the RPOF in November of last year. I had two basic allegations. One, that my removal was illegal under Florida law because they were voiding an election that had taken place in August when I was won a position as a committee man on the Duval County Republican Executive Committee. And most importantly to me, I was challenging their claim that the word Republican was the official property of the Republican Party of Florida. And then in December, the Florida Republican Assembly joined my lawsuit. I had originally filed as a pro se litigant, and then the FRA joined with their attorney, and we went forward together as co-litigants in this litigation.
Chuck?
So you're telling me that all of a sudden the RPOF just kind of began to attack the FRA. I was under the assumption that something did happen and that it might have possibly been what the Florida Republican Assembly did after the RPOF tried to keep Donald Trump off of the primary ballot in Florida, because that was something that the FRA came out vehemently against, and really, in some person's opinion, felt like the Florida Republican Assembly forced the RPOF to put Donald Trump back on the primary.
Yeah, I think that was something that stuck in their craw. The Florida Republican Assembly had also been critical of Governor DeSantis, of his having decided to run against President Trump in the primaries. And they had leveled some criticisms at the DeSantis administration. And I think that DeSantis, he had a lot of influence with what goes on in the RPOF. And I think that was the impetus for this, probably a variety of things, but those were the impetus for this barrage of cease and desist letters.
Mike, did you have something to say there a minute ago?
I think that's pretty clear. I just, Robin and I were talking in another meeting a while back, and I just realized that Robin was the tip of the spear of the whole thing. Robin, were you the first one that the RPOF cited, expelled from your position? Were you the first one?
There were two people. I and Connie Bruni, who was I think was Connie, and Connie is in Sarasota County. She was removed from her position on the REC down there at the same time I was removed from mine, and under the same circumstances and with the same charges leveled against us. So, but I was the first person they went after, and not being on the REC that's not that important to me. Being a member of the REC, I thought what they did was improper. What's important to me is that people follow the rules. And the rules were at that time that a grievance could not be filed against me. It could not be upheld for two reasons. First of all, you cannot file a grievance against somebody within 90 days of an election. So that grievance was filed easily within 90 days of the August 20th primary, and was not subject to consideration for that reason. Additionally, their rules specifically say that a grievance can't be considered when there's been litigation is in progress, or litigation has been threatened. And the RPOF had threatened to sue us for our use of the name Republican. I was offended by that, and primarily this is a key First Amendment issue. So you were talking earlier, Chuck, in the introduction about the freedom of association, which the RPOF has a right to do. They have a right to decide who gets to be members of their inner circle. But there's also the right of independent Republican voters who want to organize independent partisan political organizations using the term Republican in their name. So according to the way the RPOF reads Florida statutes and this absurd claim they have to actually own the word Republican, if you wanted to organize a group in Lake County called Lake County Republicans Against Government Corruption, you would literally have to go to the RPOF and get permission from them to use the word Republican in the name of that group, which is it's an absurdity. I mean, if the average Republican, when you register in Florida, there's a uniform voter registration application. Nowhere in that application is there any information that discloses the fact that if you choose to affiliate with a particular party, that you are prohibited from actually independently organizing, self-identifying as a member of that party when organizing partisan political organizations. When you register as a Republican or a Democrat in the state of Florida, you're surrendering a significant portion of your First Amendment rights, according to the RPOF. I find that's offensive.
I agree.
It's an obscene trampling on our First Amendment rights, and
The way I
fact that
understand-
the RPOF would try to pull that off
the way I understand the
frightening.
lawsuit and how it played out, that kind of both parties kind of won on their respective positions. The RPOF was told that they certainly can use the term Republican, but also the FRA can use the term Republican, but the RPOF can throw people out of their party if they want to. That's pretty much what the end result of that was. So both parties in the lawsuit could claim a victory, if you will. So I think the idea of you being able to use the term Republican is pretty much taken care of. We can, and you and the FRA do, and you'll continue to.
Well,
I have a question that, I don't know, maybe you should wait a little bit longer into the process, but is the RPOF redeemable?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
You want to answer that first, Mike?
Well, I just want to say that I find it to be absurd that within the party, we're getting to the point where there's even competition between Republicans to be the standard bearer of the Republican Party in whatever you're doing, whether you're in a partisan county commission race or a House race or Senate race or anything like that, is pretty much prohibited. I mean, if you can't speak against the chairman, let's just say that you're considering there's a chairman election coming up, and you're not allowed to point out that the chairman's a lobbyist and that's a conflict of interest, or you'll be thrown out of the party. I mean, there's no even competition for leadership of the party itself, Robin. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree completely.
Right.
It's a rigged game, and it's run by lobbyists. So the Evan Power is a lobbyist. He's part of that's what he does for a living.
Right. So at the end of the day, Evan represents special interests for remuneration. So, and then you get back and forth. You know, we talked about the power of the governor and the cabinet and our elected officials federal congressmen and state reps and stuff having so much influence over the party. And then when the chairman's a lobbyist representing special interests for money, it really just skews the pendulum so far in favor of government, which is a special interest, and the special interest that Ramda and Associates are representing. The people of the state have literally no voice in their government under the current circumstances. Can you agree?
Absolutely, especially when you consider the influence that dark money has on Republican Party politics. So, you were talking earlier that the chairman of the Rules Committee of the Republican Party of Florida, which is probably the most powerful committee they have, is a gentleman from Gainesville named William Stafford Jones, who runs over 150 different political action committees. And when they have their Rules Committee meetings, those are behind closed doors. Nobody keeps any minutes. Nobody knows what goes on. And at the end of these quarterly meetings they have 4 times a year, the Rules Committee emerges. The white smoke emerges from the chimney, and the Rules Committee comes out and presents these rule changes, some of which are very dramatic, to the state executive or to the state committee of the Republican Party, and they rubber stamp them. And that there's so much about Florida politics that are corrupt.
So, for those people in our audience who may not totally understand the purpose of the Florida Republican Assembly, what does the Florida Republican Assembly offer to the Republicans here in Florida?
Well, the Florida Republican Assembly is actually an outgrowth of the California Republican Assembly, which back in the 1960s, Ronald Reagan credited with his election to the office of governor. So the Republican Assembly organization has always been near and dear to Ronald Reagan's heart. And since that time, it's grown into a nationwide organization that I think is now in over 25 states. And the Florida Republican Assembly is one of the largest of the state chapters. And we are meant to be an independent voice for Republican voters. We're not controlled. We don't just have an arm's length relationship with the RPOF. We really don't want anything. We want no official relationship at all with the RPOF. Not because we don't recognize that an institutional Republican Party has important work to do. It's not because we're not loyal Republicans. It's because we recognize that Republican voters need a voice, and that's what we are. We're a very conservative Judeo-Christian organization. We're America First, obviously strong backers of Donald Trump. And we're here to, who else is going to raise a voice in opposition to what the RPOF is doing? Who else is going to try to sound the alarm? And that's one of the reasons why I'm running for the post of vice chairman of the Republican Party, the Florida Republican Assembly, is because I think that we can do things that would make us more effective in the years ahead.
So, Chuck, to answer your question, is the RPOF redeemable? The only redemption for the RPOF is that the members of the executive board of the Republican Party of Florida get a conscience, because what's going on there is obviously wrong. Everyone knows it's wrong. So the question becomes, knowing that Evan Power is a lobbyist and that's a conflict of interest, if there was an election today, would the RPOF executive board reelect Evan Power? And the answer is yes, they would. So as long as the executive board of the Republican Party of Florida denies its own conscience of what's right and wrong, then I would say the RPOF is not redeemable. But at some point, if people would rise up and just address their business with a constitutional mindset, then I would say that the RPOF is very redeemable, and that the RPOF is the best path toward restoring our American republic, Chuck.
Well, very well said. So I guess my other concern would be, maybe it's a little too early to get into that. I think what I heard you say, though, regarding the beginnings of the FRA is that it was near and dear to Ronald Reagan's heart. So it does seem a bit odd that the Republicans here in Florida would be that adamantly opposed to an organization that worked so well for the beloved Ronald Reagan. I mean, how do we reconcile that?
It's what Mike said. If we had leaders in the Republican Party of Florida with a conscience, um, uh, you know, they'd think twice about doing these things. We're supposed to be. I've got no problem with conceiving the Republican Party as a Big Tent party, but it's a Big Tent party that's pretty much ignoring its right wing. We say in the Florida Republican Assembly that we're the Republican wing of the Republican Party. And what we're dealing with in Florida is a bunch of lobbyists, power brokers, campaign consultants, career politicians who run the Republican Party of Florida. I'm talking about the institutional Republican Party of Florida, that organization that operates out of Tallahassee and then has county executive committees throughout the state. They operate that basically for their benefit, to accumulate power and wealth, and that's wrong. It's, Florida years ago, 20 years ago, I would defend Florida as being a very is not a corruption-free state. I would no longer be able to make that claim, not with the influence of all the dark money PACs and the fact that the institutional Republican Party in Florida is controlled by a group of lobbyists.
Yeah, the concept of republicanism, I believe, is really at the core of what the real issues are. We've lost sight of what republicanism is, I mean, certainly we all understand conservatism. Well, what's the difference? Republicanism is a form of government. It's a Republican form of government is a bottom-up form of government. It's the people who are being governed telling the governors how they govern and that they are supposed to be governing for their benefit. So it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. If you are governing in a manner that is void of the benefit, the absolute foundational benefit of we the people, you are not governing as a Republican. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. So what we find is the concept of Bernie and AOC are on this anti-oligarchy tour. Well, that's exactly what the Democrats are. They're an oligarchy. They don't poll their representatives and get who's got the majority opinion on something, and then the party goes in that direction. That's not at all what they do. The party bosses tell everybody how they are supposed to govern, and that is top down. That is not bottom up. And so, if the Republican Party decides that they're going to govern themselves the same way the Democrats are, what value is that to we the people?
I agree. I'm a Republican from the ground up, but I've become disillusioned, and for obvious reasons, for the reasons that Mike and you have discussed on this podcast. I've become disillusioned because the Republican Party it no longer looks after the interest of Republican voters. It's turned its back on them, and in fact, in many cases, works against the interest of the average American and the average conservative Republican, and it's discouraging. But I agree with Mike. I think the party is redeemable, but we have to clean house.
Sounds
So, I would just like to chip in here if you don't mind. And it's interesting. It's a difficult thing to do, what I'm about to suggest, but it's what always has to be done as mature adults. When we have a disagreement with somebody, we should talk to them about it. And then in a political situation, this is why debates happen, so that people can expose their thoughts and their ideas to the public, to the people that they represent, Republicans in this case, in the state of Florida. So if the Republican Party of Florida has a problem with the FRA, they should give them a call And like, for example, you're seeing the legislature right now usurping the authority of city councils and county commissioners. Well, that should be a lobbying delegation from the state down to the county to say, hey, we've got some land use concerns here. We've got a growing population and we need a little more density out of you guys. So let's have a roundtable about it. Not, let's just use the heavy hand of government and we'll just draft up some legislation that usurps the city councils and county commissioners over high density multifamily apartment complexes. And you're going to do it because we said so, with no discussion and no dialogue.
Right.
And that's what we're missing. And when any organization prohibits dissent, the game's over, Robin.
Oh, I agree. I think I think the legislature has usurped so much power and authority that would ordinarily devolve to the municipalities and the counties that some of these governments, local governments, have been effectively neutered. When I was on city council here in Jacksonville, I saw it happen over and over again. In fact, they starting several years ago, they actually began interfering in zoning matters, which are by definition traditionally within the purview of the municipality and the counties, and the legislature was going in and deciding that the certain zoning ordinances were not proper, then they would simply wipe them off the books, make them invalid, and a number of other things too. It's I think government needs to respect the local. I mean, we need to respect the localities and their ability to self-govern.
And it's also interesting to me, Robin. I believe it's true that in Tallahassee, laws are passed that are actually unconstitutional, and the legislature and the governor, for that matter, know that the law is unconstitutional, and they also know how much money it costs to fight it. So they basically just in your face pass bad legislation because they understand what a colossal effort it takes to challenge them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I learned through my litigation that litigating in court, even when you start out as a pro se litigant, winds up being very expensive and time consuming. And so I think one of the strategies the RPOF was employing in our litigation was simply to try to drag it out as long as they possibly could and make it as expensive as they could. But yes, you've got organizations like the Florida League of Cities and entities like that. I'd like to see them more actively involved in challenging some of the legislation that comes out of Tallahassee, because it is usurping the home rule authority that the cities and counties ought to have.
We are just about at the end of our time. I thought maybe we could finish up, Robin, with maybe you're giving us your vision for the Florida Republican Assembly here in our state.
I come from a background in the JCs, the Junior Chamber of Commerce, which was a group that was extremely active, very large here in Florida. I was a president and chairman of the chapter here in Duval County back in the late 80s, early 90s. And one of the things I learned from that, it was a leadership training organization for young men and women. One of the things I learned from that was that you need to delegate. You need to have, it can't just be a one-person operation. So I would like to see the FRA using its elected 7-member executive committee, state executive committee. I would like to see more authority delegated to individual members. I'd like to see more emphasis on membership and chapter development. I think we need to be probably a little more savvy when it comes to our political messaging and things like that. We have the right message. It's just deciding when and how to deliver it. And I think that one of the things that Mike alluded to before is, when if you spend all your time poking the bear in the eye, the bear is going to poke back. I'd rather spend our time trying to be effective in Tallahassee in getting bad legislation defeated and good legislation passed.
So, Mike, would you mind giving us a final comment from you this morning?
Well, I just think that Robin is an amazing resource. He's mentioned today that he served on the city council in Jacksonville. He's a past county commissioner. He's got a lot of experience. It's extraordinarily valuable to everyone here in the state of Florida. So I just want to thank Robin for taking the time to come on, Chuck.
Yes, and as well, I thank you, Robin, and I thank you, Mike, and thank you all again for tuning in to our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restoring Our American Republic, or check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -ROAR. Like and share the program, please. And remember, if you are unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. So until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump. And God bless America.